Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Greg, this is I.W.A, and today we're going to be going over some of the products that you've seen in some of our videos and you will see in some of our upcoming videos. So pyrotechnics, explosives, flashbangs, smoke grenades, and they're all from a company called I.W.A. They specialize in non-lethal pyrotechnics as well as explosive special effects for military, law enforcement, and small and major motion pictures.
These pyrotechnics are for professional use only, and if you are interested in getting certified, head over to the IWA website and take the certification. This will inform you on how each product is used and how to employ them.
So when it comes to the pyro, there's three main types. You have pull ring lever, which is more or less like your grenade. You also have the electric ignition with like the door breaching charge, string bounds, the Mark 9, and you also have your friction devices, which essentially they kind of work in a similar fashion to like a road flare where you remove the cap and use the cap to ignite the actual device. The mortar rounds also function in a very similar fashion, but that pretty much covers the three main categories. We're going to jump in starting with the grenades.
These pull ring fly-off lever devices are very popular when it comes to law enforcement, military, airsoft, paintball, and even the filmmaking industries. So starting with the flashbangs, this is the M11. It is a multi-bang thermobaric, and you can identify it by the 4 rings at the bottom. And essentially what it does is it explodes 4 times. So if you really want to surprise someone, this is the one to go with. Then we have the M12, and this is the more economical of the 3. So if you're balling on a budget and you still want to play with some pyro, this is it. Then finally we have the M13, and this one is one of my favorites, what I like to call Big Bertha, and she is the biggest and loudest of the 3. Moving on to the smoke grenades, we have the M14 and the M15 here. So the M14 is the smaller of the 2. It outputs smoke for about 45 to 55 seconds. Most people are going to prefer the big boy, which is the M15, and it's the rapid smoke model. So basically what that means is it outputs a larger amount of smoke in a quicker period of time, and both of these actually come in multiple colors. Now to the activation part, which is one of my favorites, if not my favorite. And then we'll start with how you hold the pyrotechnic. So most people think you're holding it like this. It's actually the complete opposite. You want the lever to be in the whip of your hand. And so in order to release the pin, you pull the pin forward, pull it back, and then pull it out. And at that point, it will detonate within 2 to 3 seconds. So it's actually very important that you do not cook off the pyro, because then your hand will explode. So if you don't know how to cook, go to the kitchen. I'm not sure. Now we're on to the safety tips, also what I call DUD Procedure 101. So in the event that the primer pops and there's no ignition, wait to approach the pyro for about 30 seconds. In the event that there is a no primer pop and no ignition, wait for about a minute. Now, last but not least, if the primer does pop and there is an ignition, wait about 2 minutes or so. And then in the case that the primer is still good, then you can try to reactivate it.
Next up, we have the 37mm smoothbore flare launcher. What's really cool about this is that it's not really regulated. Yeah, anyone can own this. You don't have to be in the military or law enforcement. It's not regulated by the NFA or the ATF. So you can get this, you can run it in the standalone configuration or kit as seen here, or you can run it on your rifle. It's actually very quick to change from this kit to the rifle. This basically, you pull this pin, this thing slides off, goes on the rifle, and you're ready to go. So first thing you'll notice is the leaf or ladder sight has increments of everywhere from between 5 to 35, which basically means from 50 meters up to 350. The range on this thing is more around the 100 to maybe pushing like 110, 120 meters or so. So you'll pretty much use most of the bottom increments on the ladder sight. Or if you want, if you're in a pinch, you can fold it down and have the 50-meter peep sight or like pistol style sight pretty much from the get-go. If you want to get a little fancier, you can mount optics on here. I've got an EOTech on here. In theory, you can mount a laser as well. What's kind of cool is that the optic is actually adjusted, so when it's level here, the bore or barrel of the launcher is actually angled up slightly. So you'll probably have to like adjust or kind of understand your holds for that. In a lot of ways, especially if you're doing stuff at night or any other low light conditions, doing stuff with an optic is actually pretty advantageous. You also have this collapsing stock, as you can see here. It makes it a little bit easier to use and employ the launcher. has a cross bolt safety right here. And of course, one button right here opens the tube. You put your rounds in there, close it. You make it a little easier on yourself when you're unloading it. Do it from a vertical position. When you're loading it, load it like this. You're not fighting gravity. Close it, and then go ahead and launch your projectile. Now, when it comes to the projectiles, there's a couple different options. You have like the flash concussion rounds, you have smoke, and you also have the parachute illuminating flares, which is really cool if you're doing something at night and you want to really make a spot glow at night. It's amazing. It's absolutely fantastic. And of course, one last thing is the chalk rounds. The chalk rounds is another round, especially for training, if you're just trying to get an idea and dial in the projectile. So that is the 37mm launcher in a nutshell. So electric ignition devices. This is where things get a little more technical and a little bit more interesting in regards to how they're actually used and different ways you can employ them. They're actually very popular in the filmmaking space. One of the movies, Olympus Has Fallen, actually used a number of string bounds for one of its bigger sequences during the drone attack, which basically had huge, massive explosions. And what's really cool about this stuff is you can basically put this together yourself using, the black powder and getting the full kit and everything. It doesn't really require a whole lot other than you obviously taking the course and getting certified. There's a couple options: the string bound, which comes in a couple different sizes, and the door breaching charge, which is one of the newer options from the electric ignition device line. There's also these Mark 9 Maroons, which are actually surprisingly very powerful. I would dare say we did a test of these in a room, and this was significantly brighter and louder. And you can, in theory, you can actually wire several of these together. So what's kind of cool is you'll have different remotes and different alpha fire systems. This one's for like a single unit versus this one's kind of meant to be used in conjunction with others. You can have like 4 of them go off at once. So it really just depends how you want to set it up. And of course, there's a variety of remotes. You got the single remote, and there's also a remote that has 4 buttons on it for like A, B, C, D, so you can coordinate or specifically pick which one you want to go off. So a couple safety tips when using the electric ignition devices and the string bounds. First and foremost, make sure you do a test with these to make sure that they're connected to each other between like the remote, whichever remote you have, and which alpha fire system they're using, whether you're using the single or the multiple. Additionally too, when you do hook your wires up to them, make sure that the alpha fire system is off when you're hooking it up. And also, especially when you start filling these with black powder and you start putting the wires in here, make sure you do not have static discharge on your body at all. Touch metal, ground yourself first. The last thing you want to do is be messing with the leads of a wire and send a static charge into the device while you're loading it with black powder. So make sure you are grounded when you are using these and that you have an extra precaution when you do so. Now, we've used the string bounds on a couple different projects of mine. They're very impressive. Every single size one of them creates a really big effect and a really big fireball, even the smaller ones too. So they're very, very impressive. One of the new items that I mentioned earlier, the door breaching charge. Now, unlike these, which is more of a visual effect, this will actually create a more physical impact. So this is designed, you're gonna fill this up with water and you're gonna fill this up with the black powder. And this is actually designed to go up on a door. Well, we did some testing on a metal door and a wood door. Now, and again, of course, when it comes to breaching, in my opinion, it's very important to know what the new is, the net explosive weight. Because in theory, when it comes to breaching doors and stuff, you typically want to use the least amount of force possible to defeat the obstacle. So when you're filling this up, depending on the type of door or whatever you're actually kind of trying to breach or whatever effect you're going for, especially when using this in training, make sure you do the calculations and you're using the right amount of black powder for the right amount of new for whatever you're trying to defeat. But this is actually a really nice package because, of course, you have the water in here that helps direct the blast toward the door. You literally just strip these adhesive backers off, stick to the door after it's been wired up and glued and set up with the alpha fire system, and you're good to go. It's pretty straightforward, and it has a very, very powerful effect, especially if this thing is fully loaded. But again, make sure you're using the proper amount of black powder based on whatever obstacle you're trying to defeat. So these right here are the Mark 9 indirect door charge, and this basically is more of a visual effect than anything. You basically strip the adhesive off the back, you place it on the door, and it allows you to have a cool looking breech on like a wooden door or internal door or something like that without damaging the door much at all. So again, this is more for visuals, but it's not so much for actually breaching the door. So if you want something that looks cool, but it's not going to damage the structure that you're in, this is great. If you actually need to take a door off its hinges or something like that, then go with the door breaching charge here, the string bound type. So when it comes to minimum safe distance for some of these bigger pyrotechnics like the string bounds or like the door breaching charge, 75 feet is what we recommend. For something like this, the indirect door charge, it's going to be more like 5 meters. Like again, this is more for visual effect than anything, so it's not going to create as nearly as much of a fireball as these, but it's still very impressive. But just always keep minimum safe distance in mind when using all these products, but especially with the string bound because the effect is just so much bigger. So when it comes to friction devices, this is where things get kind of interesting. They actually operate very similar to something like a road flare, where you take the cap off because it has the striking surface on there, and that's what you strike against the device, and that's what ignites it, and you throw it, obviously do whatever you need to do, and then the device goes off. The Mark 5 is the smallest, has a moderate flash effect, and of course the Mark 7 is like twice that, so it has a much brighter, much louder bang. And of course there's actually, this one's kind of interesting, it actually kind of reminds me of a potato masher. This one's designed to be used underwater for diver recall, so that's kind of why it has this different style body on it, and it's just wrapped and packaged differently. So now the mortar system is actually pretty interesting. It still uses a friction type munition just like these, where essentially you take the cap off, you strike the device against the cap, drop it in the tube, you have about a 6-second delay, and then it launches out. And of course, you know, the range is depending on the angle that you hold the mortar tube. It's a 48 millimeter tube, and the projectile is about 44 millimeters in diameter, and the range is about 150 to 200 meters depending on, of course, the angle. There's a couple different munitions types. We tested out smoke, there's a flash concussion one, and of course there's also like a burst one as well, which is really cool. And there's going to be a whole bunch of other munitions that they'll come out with, and the later gen mortar rounds will actually look much closer to the mortar rounds that are used by the military. So this is a really cool option. Eventually they'll have sights for it. Eventually there'll probably be an option for a bipod. Currently in its current configuration, you just hold it like this and angle appropriately and kind of eyeball where you want the rounds to land. Alright guys, so that pretty much about covers it. Pull ring lever devices, electric ignition, and friction devices.
And if you have any more questions, please, we heavily consider taking the course on the IWA website. It will quite literally walk you through every question you could possibly have.
Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.